Good morning.
Good morning. It is June 26th, 2022, and our talk today is You Are More Than Your Body. So I'm going to do a reading written by Ernest Holmes in 365, and it was actually yesterday's reading, the 25th. And it's entitled The Life of the Divine is My Life. So you can kind of close your eyes if you want to just listen to this and affirm it to yourself. It's written with an I so that you can make it yours. So Ernest said, God does not withhold anything from me. All that it is given fully to me to enjoy. The life of God is perfect. It is eternal. It is the essence of all things. That this life is God's gift to me. Therefore, this fullness is within me, ready to manifest through me as I partake of it. Since I am self-choosing, even though divinely endowed, I partake of my divinity only as I let it through. I'm always, everywhere, in the midst of plenty. I know that I live in a changeless reality. I am not disturbed by the passage of time, the movement around me, nor the variations of experience I go through. Something within me remains immovable and says, be still and know that I am God. I now consciously begin to draw upon the life that is mine. I now begin to re-educate myself definitely by whatever steps I may to a belief that there is given to me a fullness of life that is divine in its origin, eternal in its presence, and always fully available. The life of the Father is my life. The infinite richness of the Father is mine to enjoy. The vital good health, the wisdom, the peace of the Father are mine. All things that proceed from him may be mine. I claim them now. The act of taking in my right and privilege, I exercise now intelligently and in full faith.
Beautiful.
And so it is.
Powerful, very powerful. When you gave me the title, You Are More Than Your Body, what occurred to me as an image, it just sort of popped in my head, and it happens all the time. I was way up high in the sky, looking down at this gigantic parking lot. In this gigantic parking lot, there were like 1 million cars, and everyone was a different model and had different benefits and different things it could do. And I realized that I was the soul about to choose the car that I was going to have for this life. And the thing that I realized when I thought about it was that the vehicle that we choose for this life is not necessarily an all-terrain vehicle. It may be a sports vehicle, and it may require more maintenance than average, and it can do some things other vehicles can't. But what I think is important is, and what was important for me, was to realize I chose the vehicle even when it isn't the vehicle that is best suited for the particular area of life that I'm engaged in. And so I think it's very easy for us to look at the vehicle we call our body and say, what's wrong with this? It's too big, it's too skinny, it's too fat, it's that. At some level, and I really believe this, we chose that body. We chose the body we came in to experience, because in a very dynamic way, at the cellular level, that body could experience life in all of its dimensions. We tend to think that we're a body and mind only. We have a mind, and the mind is where all the thoughts are, but actually at a cellular level, every cell of our body is responding to the life that we're living. And so it's a holographic experience. And so you would choose the right body for it. And the tricky thing is, not all bodies are designed to last as long or require more or less maintenance. I had a Porsche for quite a while, and I loved that car. And every time I drove it over 100 miles an hour, I had to take it and have it retuned. It was wonderful what it would do well. And there was no question, it was a high maintenance car. And so some of us, I think, have high maintenance bodies. And I would guess that has to do with the particular things we came here to learn and do and accomplish in that body. It was not an accident that you got the body you got.
Well, exactly. And you know, when Ernest Holmes says in his prayer, he said something about divine health is mine or something like that. he's not denying that eventually we all make our transition. And since we still believe that I am, that is God, that we still know that I am God, that's still who we are. The body, like the old car, sometimes needs to go to the garage and get it tuned up or get fixed,
Or the junkyard.
or the junkyard.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's time to trade experiences, and we do that when we make our transition. We firmly believe that that is just like walking through a door. That's why we call it a transition. And actually, I think everything gets a whole lot easier and lighter and more loving experience once we do that. And yet, boy, we fight tooth and nail to claw to hold on to
Yeah.
this life that we have, thinking that this body is
It's us.
me, and it's not. It's just the car, that we are driving, and we continue to experience things. And like when a car goes on a trip and goes from one state to another, has a totally different experience, but it's still the same car. And that's true for us. We have many different experiences as self that doesn't include this vehicle, this body. And so we really need to remember that, because all of us face losses of loved ones and even our own time of transition. And so we need to remember that is not who we are. And many people go to that experience with great enthusiasm. Swami Yogananda
Yeah.
died at a banquet,
Yeah, that's right.
and when he was 60 years old, sitting in his chair with a peaceful smile. And his body remained unembalmed in a casket for viewing for months, smelling like beautiful flowers. So I don't think he went kicking and screaming,
I'm reminded though of our trip across country. We had a Sable, Ford Mercury Sable. We called it our not so able Sable, station wagon, which periodically broke down. And we were carrying audio equipment and everything you can think of up to Canada to do some workshops. And so the Sable broke down in Utah, and nothing around, nowhere. It was a beautiful day, perfectly clear, not a cloud in the sky, beautiful fields, and nobody.
Stream going through the meadows
Yeah,
with
and I'm thinking,
wildflowers.
how could it be so beautiful? And at the same time, we are so alone. And then a pickup truck pulled up, and I believe a Mormon got out of the truck and said what's going on, and told him, and he took Judith to.
See, we had AAA, but we had no cell phones
Yeah.
at that time.
So he took Judith to his house, where Judith could call for AAA and have them come and get us. And then he brought her back to the car. Wow. I mean, the level of kindness and the willingness to do that experience in Utah is one of my cherished memories that only happened because the vehicle that I had broke down.
That's true. And coming from Florida, where you don't pick up strangers,
No.
that he would pick us up, and we were in, not that we looked menacing, but
You look pretty menacing.
halfway through the drive to where I could use the phone, I turned around and looked, and he had a little baby boy in the back seat. And I thought, wow, he picked up a stranger, granted a woman, but nevertheless, he picked up a stranger and took them into their time of need where they needed to go, even with his baby boy in the back seat.
And then he went to the 7-Eleven, he sold a child.
And I think it was so beautiful. No wonder people love that area and those people. They were very.
But what I really want to emphasize is that the vehicle, because of its design and its imperfections, will take you places that you would never go. It will take you places that without that particular nature of a breakdown, you would not get. So you could say you signed up for the most difficult class that you could possibly sign up for, and you may not enjoy
your
it.
car is going to break down.
Yeah, because you're not necessarily going to enjoy it, but I think there could be breakthroughs too. Now, the other piece of that is when I had the Porsche, I drove it. Went on a race, what they call a Gymkhana race, which is a time trial. And I drove my car as fast as I possibly could, and I came in 10th. And there were only 10 cars in my competition. So I was the last one and they waited for me to get through it. I'm a hot new driver. I've got a Porsche and I came in 10th. Now, what's interesting was I found fault with my body. That is, the car wasn't up to par. I went to my mechanic, who was actually a professional racer, and he said, let's take it out on the road and see what's wrong with it. Thank God I had fresh underwear in the glove box. I had no idea what this car would do. I think we have no idea what this body can do, what it's here to teach us, what we can learn through it. And by the time we get done, so then I went back to the race another month later, and I came in fourth. I never came in first. I wasn't that good, but I came in fourth because I now understood the limits of my vehicle.
Mhm.
I understood what my vehicle could do. I think we don't really know the limits of our vehicle, and we often underestimate them.
Yes, and the part of this that can be confusing for those of us who practice it regularly
Yeah.
is that often we will do our affirmative prayer and have like miraculous results, instantaneous results sometimes,
And then sometimes not.
and then sometimes not. I go, well, why not this time? All I can say is I firmly believe that life is unfolding for us exactly as it should.
Yeah.
I really believe in many instances it's been pre-planned with your major participation for your personal growth before you even come here. I actually received an email from a woman and a husband who she's a channel, and he facilitates her channeling and was inviting people to participate with questions and answers for a fee, monthly fee. And he says the one requirement is you must already accept the idea of a pre-planned life. In other words, in spirit, before you decide what your next life will be, you are participating with others in planning it for your personal growth.
You get a triptych and everything.
For your personal growth. And guess how we grow? Most quickly through challenges and hardships, not by being born with a silver spoon and getting everything easily. We don't tend to develop as much that way. We say that you can grow through inspiration or desperation.
But you will grow.
Most of us choose desperation.
Yeah, most of us grow kicking and screaming. And I'm not asking anybody now to believe in reincarnation, because we're not here to promote it. But when I was doing hypnosis years ago with physicians and chiropractors and dentists teaching pain management and things like that, I also got to work with a young man who was developing a paralyzing disease. And the disease kept impairing him more and more and more. And so what I did was I hypnotized him and thought, well, let me take him back to a time before the disease and see if his body can remember how to create a healthy body again. I thought that's, a clever strategy. And it's actually worked for me in the past with some other clients. So I took him back and I took him back and I took him back. And apparently I took him back too far. And I said, where are you? And he said, I'm in a concentration camp. And I thought, whoa, he's a victim. And he said, no, I'm a soldier. And I am maintaining the concentration camp. And I have been hurting the people and doing things that are unconscionable. And I didn't care. And I said, so tell me what that means now. And he didn't know. So then I brought him forward into that period of time in between life. And I said, tell me where you are now. And he said, I haven't entered my new body. And I said, so when you do you know what you're here for? He said, yes, I do. I said, what are you going to be here for? He said, to learn in depth what it's like to have to be in the hands of other people, not punishment or not punishment, but to know that literally every step I take, every breath I take is dependent on someone else's ability to care for me. Mm. And the disease got worse. I visited him several times in the hospital and he died 6 months later. And it was an odd paralysis that he had. But what I learned from that experience, whether it's true or whether it's a great story that he fabricated for me, is that we believe, and I believe we're here on purpose, and we're here to fulfill experiences. The interesting part of it was he wasn't here to be punished. He was here because he didn't experience, he didn't have the empathy that he needed to develop. His soul needed to experience a kind of empathy and understanding that it didn't have. So he came here to experience that, and when we would talk, he would say, "I'm not being punished. This is not bad karma. This is what's happening to me because this is what I need to know. And when I wake up, I won't remember. And when I would wake him up, he would not remember any of it."
Very fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, and that leads me to another strong belief I have, and I read it over and over in my spiritual books, which is that we make our transition or die, as we say in our culture, at precisely the right time, and not 1 second before, not 1 second after. In other words, it is no tragedy to die. Those of us who love people who die feel like it's a tragedy because we experience the loss. I think for the person who makes their transition, no matter how much they wanted to stay while they were here, as soon as they're through the door on the other side, they're happy to be there.
Relieved you.
And that is based on all the near-death experiences that people have and now openly talk about. And now it's being openly researched in nearly every
Oh, yeah.
hospital because
It's so common.
it is so common, and it's always happened, but people wouldn't talk about it because they knew everybody would think they were
And
crazy.
many religions would frown on that.
Oh,
you know,
yes.
So,
So the tragedy, we must remember, even though any person who's about to make their transition is not generally celebrating that fact, it's for the ones, the loved ones behind that need to remember that that person is not their body. Their body is the vehicle that they were here with. And they can be with you always if they're in your heart. I've lost my mother and my father, and I never have felt like I have lost them because they're still with me. They're still with me in my heart and my consciousness. I still, talk to them, hear from them. And we need to remember that because the loss feels
Yeah.
devastating to lose. a
So we're
loved one.
talking a lot about death and dying, and that's because some of our folks in our group are experiencing different aspects of that, and in our own family we're
And
experiencing
in our
that.
family.
So it's a really big deal, but I don't want this to be about death and dying. This is really about life and living. It's really
How
about
then shall we live?
exactly, because I think when you get that this is not it, then could you please make the best of it? And I think what happens is we think, I'm like, I've got to figure this thing out. What is it? Am I being punished or what? Stop it. How could you engage, if you could, more in this life that you're living, savoring in the taste of everything that you're doing? Because if you could come to the idea that you came here to have that experience, then you could have that experience and allow yourself to embrace it no matter what it is.
Well, and I think how we live it was in the reading, this be still and
Yeah.
know that I am God, meaning that God is within you. And the I am is with you always in your vehicle. It's you
Yeah.
and God in the vehicle driving together, So that helps everything. Knowing that you're not in this by yourself, you're not in it alone. And I think your point too, Bob, of living life fully. I read a story about a man who was a monk in a religious order, and he got this urge to dance and to be a dancer. He actually left the spiritual organization where he was like a monk and became a dancer. So he demonstrated God by doing what he loved so that
Yeah.
his life could be fulfilling to him and others. He ended up being part of the beginnings of the modern dance movement.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have all that formal training.
That's so powerful because it reminds me too of another story where this young girl had been to several different clinical psychologists and therapists trying to figure out how to manage her extraordinary ADD. She was just bouncing all the time, moving all the time. This is a young girl, probably 12, 13 years old, and she just can't sit still. She can't sit still in school. She's a real problem. And so you could say, what kind of a vehicle was she and what was she here for? Really? So, and all of them wanted
She
to
was a
give
bumper car.
right, all of them wanted to give her medication, and some of them tried the medications, and none of which worked very well. They finally took her to a psychoanalyst. So this tells you how old it is. And the psychoanalyst just sat back and watched and watched and watched and didn't say a word to her. Watched her flitter about the room and move around the room. At one point, the radio was on, and she bounced around the room some more. Mom came back and he said, "Why don't you enroll her in ballet school?" And Mom looked like, "Are you crazy?" Well, she did enroll her in ballet school and she became a famous ballerina. She found her purpose, and the other things all fell into place. You see, once she was doing what she was here to do, even though she didn't know she was there to do it, it changed everything.
Yeah. So,
Good.
so what other metaphors did you want to share, or aspects of your metaphor with the car?
Well, I
Or
think
life?
I think some of us, at least at my age, I need to start viewing myself as a classic car rather than a beat up one or an old one. And I think what we need to do is admire our own history and the technology that went into the creation of the history that we have. We need to be willing to be the story of an experience that no one else can have. You know, when I go to a car show, I'll look at one of my favorite cars are the old Packards. And I look at an old Packard with the mohair inside. The mohair is a coating they have for the fabric coating. And I can smell it, and it reminds me of when my father had one. And I look at the grill, and it's stately, and I look at all, and I have a whole rush of emotions and feelings. What I'm saying is this Packard embodies a story, a very valuable and important story. And all of the cars that followed that had something to do with that car, because they all had to come out of that technology. What if we were to say, I'm a classic? How old are you? I'm 24 and I'm already a classic. And I say that only because if we start valuing the classic that we are, the value that we have, then we're not doing this. Yeah, well, I'm getting older. I'm making comparisons, and someone else is better than I am. And so I think it's important.
I do too.
What have you got? What
I've
have you
got a
got?
quote I want to share. I love this by Deepak Chopra.
Oh yeah.
Our body is the place that our memories and dreams call home for the time being. Our memories and dreams call home for the time being.
Mhm.
I like that. And I've got another one by Rumi that I like. The body itself is a screen to shield and partially reveal the light that is blazing inside your presence.
Let's read that one again.
The body itself is a screen to shield and partially reveal the light that is blazing inside your presence.
Yeah, I love it. It reminds me of years and years ago. Theaters were very different than they are now. You would sit in the theater, hopefully middle row, 10 rows back, and wait and wait and wait. And then because the light of the movie was so bright, it couldn't wait for the curtains to be opened, and it would show through the curtains, and you'd have the lion, roaring. But what you have is the curtains opening, and the excitement of what you see. What's behind the curtains cannot wait to be delivered. It is so intense. It is so exciting. And everybody's, oh my God, yes, it's wonderful. The curtains are parting now for you to show your greatness, for you to show your light. And that light has always been there. It's behind the curtain. It's nevertheless not hidden. And you can reveal it. You can bring it out. So I would ask you this week, ask yourself, how is my light showing? How is it that I want to see my light? How can I share my light?
Indeed. And use that concept of the divine presence being within you.
Yeah.
And that it loves you, it loves you, whether you heal, whether you make a transition, that you are always loved. And so that brings us an acceptance of what is. Byron Katie says, whatever is
Supposed to be.
is best.
Yeah.
That's whatever is happening is happening because God is allowing it, creating it with you. And so it is always to be accepted as what's best.
So I picked a song today for each of you to take as your song, and we're singing this song to you. And it's a Joe Cocker song, You Are So Beautiful. And there's a little extra treat on the end of that one. So we're going to show that for those of you that want to look it up on YouTube.
I'll have the link to
Yeah,
that
we'll have
with
the
the
link for it.
description at the top.
So I think we're going to move into now the part of our service where we also ask you to please support us as best you can. Your support is essential. It helps us continue to do what we're doing. This month, we've had quite a few expenses because we support the parent church organization too with the tithe. So you're not just tithing to us when you tithe into the Centers for Spiritual Living to help keep this consciousness going.
So we know that most of us that are here with us, we know that you give regularly. and often once a month, and that's great. But there are others who watch us later and whatnot that
Yeah.
may not know how to support us. And so if you would care to donate, you go to our website, which is CSL, that's Center for Spiritual Living, cslpalmbeaches.org. And when you go there, you click on ways to donate, and it will show you options for donating. And so we appreciate your support. We usually share I need to end the recording.